Welcome to the fourth Sunday of Lent, commonly known as Mothering Sunday, but could also be described as Passion Sunday as well. And this week we're looking at the radiant passion of Jesus. Now, today, as it's the beginning of the week, we're concentrating on Luke 9:28-36. And I'm going to read it through at my normal rate and then read it slower so we can savor each phrase, savouring each phrase. So we've looked at how Mark presents the story of the Transfiguration. This week, we turn to Luke's account. Luke tells the same story, but he tells it in his own distinctive way. There are parallels and patterns that Luke wants to spotlight. The Transfiguration took place on an unnamed mountain. Traditionally, this has been identified as Mount Tabor, but modern scholars think this unlikely, partly because Tabor had a settlement on its summit. Wherever this mountain was, the distinctive way in which Luke tells the story links it to three other mountains: Mount Sinai, the Mount of Olives, and the hill of Calvary. Luke gives us a tale of four mountains. So, I'll now read Luke 9:28-36, firstly in my normal reading voice. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him, and went up onto a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud, saying, "This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. And I'll now read that much more slower. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, It is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. So, Tim Chester, it's a question here. How does Luke's account differ from Mark's? Well, let's let's read Mark's account. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain. Right. Well, Luke says just a mountain, where where Mark says high mountain. There he was transfigured before them, says Mark. Well, Luke says his clothes became bright as a flash of lightning. And whereas Mark says his clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. He mentions Moses and Elijah appearing, but Mark doesn't describe them, these two men, but he knows who they were. Where Mark says Elijah and Moses, Luke says Moses and Elijah, and they appeared in glorious splendour talking to Jesus. Where Marx doesn't say anything about glorious splendour. Right. Luke is talking about Luke states that they spoke about his departure, which he was to bring fulfilment at Jerusalem. Mark cuts this out. Mark's is what they call the express gospel, where Luke's is a lot more slower and a lot more informative. Luke describes Peter, James, and John as very sleepy, and yet when they were awake, they saw his glory, and the two men standing with him. And as the men were leaving, it's Peter who said to him, "Master, it is good for us to be here," where Mark says, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here." Then it's basically the same. Let us put up 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Both of the accounts say he did not know what to say. Luke cuts off at this point, where Mark says why, which is unlike Mark. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them. But in Luke, he says that they entered the cloud. Then there was a voice. Luke says, "This is my son whom I've chosen, listen to him." Whereas Mark says, "This is my son whom I love, listen to him." And that's it. That's it. It finishes. Luke adds an extra bit. When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. Mark says nothing about this. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. Nothing like that in Mark's gospel. So there are a few details. But we will find out tomorrow what some of the distinctive features of Luke's presentation of the Transfiguration. I can give you a couple of them. Luke leaves out the word transfigured. And it's a reference to lightning. And then Luke links the fear of the disciples to being covered by the cloud. So tomorrow we look at Luke 9 verse 34, and the meditation is a Charles Wesley hymn. "Arise, my soul, arise, shake off thy guilty fears." Although being American, it's got the American version, "Shake off your guilty fears." And Tuesday, we're looking at a further part of Luke's Gospel. And the meditation is by Joseph Hart. "A man there is, a real man with wounds still gaping wide." So the fourth week of Lent looks to be interesting. Now, I have no idea why this is going off subject, but I might as well tell you. The previous week, the second week of Lent, had 6 views of my videos. And I don't know whether this is a problem with YouTube, but last week, third week of Lent, I don't know if I had any views for Saturday. Unlikely. But I noticed disappointingly I had no views at all, which doesn't surprise me. But yet I upload a ghost story, The Face, by E.F. Benson, and it had 1 view within its first 24 hours. Whether it was a whole view, I don't know. I doubt whether my videos contain whole views, but I was somewhat disappointed about having no views, and I felt very discouraged, and I wondered, should I continue? But I will continue. I will continue to the 17th, which is Passion Sunday, of course. 24th of it's Passion Sunday next week, of course. It's Mothering Sunday today, and the Mothering Sunday that I know is that people, well, the American way is you celebrate your mother, which is right. It does say in the Old Testament, "Honor thy father and thy mother." But the tradition of Mothering Sunday is that you go, if you can, go to the church you were baptized. baptized at? The church you grew up in. I didn't grow up in a church, but I had teachings from my nan, who attended St George's Roman Catholic Church in the city, in my city, where I come from. But I wasn't baptized there. I was baptized in another of the city's St George's Church, the one at Tombland. I was baptized there, not on a Sunday, but on one Thursday morning in 2012. And rather than being confirmed and receiving my first communion, the Catholics do it the other way round. You have the first communion, then you have the confirmation, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. The first video, you normally have your confirmation and your first communion at the same service. Confirmation to non-Anglicans is a profession of faith. You profess your faith in the Church of England. You profess it to a bishop, the Bishop of Norwich in my case. I professed it my faith to the Bishop of Norwich. He confirmed me and then gave me my first communion, not in the cathedral, what they have on Holy Saturday, this huge service. I had it in the chancel of St George's Church in Tombland, and when I say chancel, it was the only accessible part of the church. The rest of the church, that was 10 years ago in June. No, 11 years ago in June. And that was a service that attracted about 60 people. 60, maybe even 65 people. And you had it in probably the smallest part of the church, with the exception of the tower and the two north and south porches. None of the rest of the church was open to, it didn't have access. So, yes, the next week is Passion Sunday. 24th of March will be Palm Sunday, which begins Holy Week. And the last reading from the book is Easter Sunday, which is 3 weeks' time. On the we're now starting the week of the 10th will be the 4th week, the 17th will be the 5th week, and the 24th begins Holy Week, and it ends with Easter Sunday or Resurrection Sunday on the 31st of March. So hopefully I shall get more to the subject. Hopefully I shall get more views on my videos. Maybe they're just wasn't any time to view them. Maybe they don't like the way. Maybe the viewers don't like the way I do my videos. But I'm hoping they would tell me that in my what's name. I have had one viewer who said your style is I think I had one viewer who said my style was not forthcoming, if you see what I mean. Stick to the stories. Well, I've done Christmas series of 25 readings for the Advent season, and I thought I would do one for the Lenten season, even though Advent and Lent are not found anywhere in the Bible, Advent means coming, the coming. We await the birth, the coming. And Lent is a where you can become disciplined. After Shrove Tuesday, you can become you receive the Ash on Ash Wednesday, which I didn't this year nor last year. Come to that matter. And Lenten fast. I mean, okay, I unfortunately broke my fast on Thursday last week. Not really sure why I did, but I did, and I haven't broken it since. Still, I can have chips on feast days, but I don't. Chips and other things which I have said I would not eat. On feast days, I can have chips if someone buys them for me. I don't go out to go and buy them deliberately. Last Thursday was what day was that? Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was the 7th of March. I had cod, mushy peas, and unfortunately chips came with it. But it wasn't a big portion of chips, it was quite a small portion, but it was still chips. So, I hope you have a very pleasant Sunday, Lord's Day, and a pleasant week to come. As always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Amen.